Chapter 1171, the third one.
Let a piece of history that has been left behind return to the present era. Return, not reappear. The meaning of the two are completely different. It's not sufficient for me to write the true history of the fourth or third epoch and disseminate it to complete the ritual.
Klein's right hand, which was holding the fountain pen, paused. He instinctively analyzed the contents of the miracle invoker potion. After some thought, he found something that perfectly matched the ritual's requirements. That was to let the people of the City of Silver escape the forsaken land of the gods and return to the northern and southern continents, allowing this history that had been left behind for 2,000 to 3,000 years return to the present era.
This isn't any easier than escaping Amon's pursuit. The only way to leave the forsaken land of the gods is to enter the giant king's court and open the palace where Dark Angel Sasrir is in deep slumber. This is the ancient sun god's negative personality. It's ranked first among the kings of angels and is known as the left hand of God, the deputy of heaven. He might even be stronger than the current Amon. Besides, his current state is being watched by the various deities. Yes, the more controllable aspect of this compared to my escape from Amon is that I can make sufficient preparations.
Klein slowly exhaled and felt that there was a certain chance of completing the ritual. In fact, he knew very well that, even without him, the City of Silver would make repeated attempts to open the door to the giant king's residence and find a way to leave this forsaken land. It was as if they were moths darting towards the flames, even at the cost of death.
No matter what, with my participation, the chances of success will definitely be higher than what it is now.
Klein subconsciously wanted to open the door to the Dark Angel's slumber ground to attract Amon, creating chaos to offset the damage caused by the Dark Angel's awakening. This was a tactic he was rather familiar with. However, he eventually rejected this idea because it was too dangerous. After spending some time with Amon and finally seeing the level of a king of angels, Klein instinctively began to fear these terrifying existences. He no longer wanted to use the conflict between them to create chaos, just their existence alone could cause irreparable damage to the surrounding Beyonders and the entire region. Under such circumstances, trying to rely on them to create a chaotic situation was no longer tottering on the edge of the abyss. If one wasn't careful, they would fall into the abyss and into eternal damnation. Therefore, it was best not to try, unless he had no other solution. To the point of escaping being just his wishful thinking, Klein didn't want to make such an attempt.
Indeed, a portion of a miracle invoker's Beyonder powers comes from history, which is why there's a ritual requirement like this. How did the other scholars of yore complete it?
Looking at the parchment on the long bronze table, he thought of a possible solution from another angle.
If it were me, the only solution I can think of is to isolate some people or history from reality. Only when they are forgotten will I allow them to return to the present era. This might take centuries, or even longer. What an evil act. Haha, it reminds me of the peach blossom spring. Those people living in utopia, away from the outside world, share some characteristics.
After some thought, Klein believed that the difficulty of this ritual for scholars of yore was whether they could survive until the ritual was held. Furthermore, there were too many accidents that could interrupt self-isolation like that.
The forsaken land of the gods has perfectly resolved these issues, but it also brings with it greater problems. Dark Angel Sasrir. What is the condition of this heaven's deputy right hand now? Is it related to the resurrection of the ancient sun god? The level involved in such a matter has already reached the ceiling of this world. Why am I always involved in such matters?
Klein gave a self-deprecating laugh. He could roughly guess that this was due to the destiny Sapphire Castle brought him. After all, blasphemer Amon was unwilling to shoulder such a destiny. Retracting his wandering thoughts, he focused his attention back onto the miracle invoker potion formula.
The worm of stars from the apprentice pathway? The supplementary ingredients contain 3 high-grade spiritual materials of the 3 neighboring pathways. I've already made the worms of time into fate siphon charms. There's no way to restore them. Let Leonard's grandpa lend me another one? How can that be called lending? I'm going to use the upgraded version of a yesterday once more charm to exchange for it. Where should I find the worm of star? There aren't many demigods from the apprentice pathway that live in the real world. The Aurora Order's Saint of Secrets, Bodis? However, I'm stuck in the forsaken land of the gods and can't deal with him. All I can do is ask Ma'am Hermit and Queen Mystic for help. At the same time, I have to urge Miss Magician to become a traveler as soon as possible. Yes, I can also get her to ask her teacher where Worms of Cosmos might be. There's actually only one main ingredient. It's either the heart of the dark demonic wolf or the Beyonder characteristic, produced by other miracle invokers. It's no longer 2 as 1. Yes, that also means that at this level there are very few scattered characteristics. They've all gathered. The dark demonic wolf is also known as the god of wishes. That's a standard angel, a subsidiary god. If I can't find any materials that can be used, wouldn't I be slaying a god? The level of an angel can already be considered a hidden existence. There's a fundamental difference from being a sequence 3. Just thinking about it makes me scared.
After making a list of helpers that he could rope in, he felt a lot more at ease. He had a feeling that he no longer feared his debts when they reached a significant amount. He lifted his right hand that was holding the fountain pen, and he continued to record what he had previously learned. Most of this was something he already knew, and he could only use it as a reminder. Finally, he wrote down incomplete information in the corner of the parchment. Sequence 1. Attendant of Mysteries. Main ingredients: 1 attendant of mysteries Beyonder characteristic. This piece of information meant that Sequence 1 Beyonder characteristics were difficult to obtain through other means, with only 3 to choose from.
One of them is on the half-full on the main peak of the Hornasis mountain range. It's with the uniqueness. The other is with Zaratul. There's still one more. According to what Leonard said, the true creator has clues to its location. Where could it be? Yes, Little Sun and the rest had hunted shapeshifters in the northern city ruins, Noise. There seems to be a high-level existence of the seer pathway lurking there. I wonder if it corresponds to miracle invoker or attendant of mysteries.
Klein gradually had a thought, and he planned on visiting Noise for a preliminary investigation after he resurrected and escaped Amun. After digesting the knowledge he had gained, he summoned his golden pocket watch from the junk pile and opened it to check the time. Before he destroyed the Blood Emperor's ruin, he had sacrificed many things that he didn't need in battle, above the gray fog to prevent any damage. Despite that, he still lost quite a bit after the battle and his eventual suicide. Furthermore, they were all extremely valuable. Just the thought of it made him almost lose control.
Grozel's Travels, Death Knell, Creeping Hunger, Fate Siphon Charm, Flaring Sun Charms, Marionette Quonas and his equipment, Marionette Inuni and his 2 rings, and the Adventurer's Harmonica. No, I can't think about it anymore. Thankfully, I had thrown Azek's copper whistle above the gray fog ahead of time. Thankfully, I can still summon the historical void projections of these items. They're just accompanying me in a different form. Probably not for Grozel's Travels.
Klein's temples throbbed as he couldn't help but feel heavy. He sighed and seriously mourned over the items, especially the mystical item that had accompanied him for a long time, Creeping Hunger. After a long silence, Klein forced his attention back to the present. As he waited for the tarot gathering to begin, he casually thought about the ancient sun god and the other matters such as Chernobyl. Suddenly, he frowned slightly.
Since this is my hometown, there have never been transmigrators. They're all ancient humans that were released by Sapphira Castle. Then do places like the Chaos Sea also have similar existences, which Chernobyl converted into a sanctuary? According to what Aemon said and what I saw in my divination, the ancient sun god had indeed woken up in Chernobyl. Then, is he a transmigrator released from Sapphira Castle, or a survivor of a sanctuary? If it's the latter, who's the third person inside the cocoon?
Upon thinking of this, Klein was alarmed as his pupils dilated slightly. He already had a certain guess about the history of the elves. It likely had nothing to do with Sapphira Castle. This way, he still couldn't find the correct corresponding identity of the third, or more correctly, the first transmigrator. This transmigrator didn't seem to leave behind any traces in history. Without any hesitation, Klein's consciousness sank into the grayish-white fog. With the power of Sapphira Castle, he came directly to a certain part of history that was relatively distant. It was made up of many fragments of light, and the clearest one was the suspended Jo Mingrui above the door of light. And beside Jo Mingrui, the corresponding fog of history was instantly lit up, due to his sufficient knowledge of Roselle. He saw a young man who also had his eyes tightly shut in the cocoon. There was no need to verify it. Through that sense of familiarity and spiritual intuition, he confirmed that this was the former incarnation of Emperor Roselle Gustav, Huang Tao. Without bothering to appreciate the emperor's true appearance, Klein turned his gaze to the other side. There was a transparent cocoon there, and the figure inside could vaguely be seen. As he had already seen the other hanged figures, he had lit up many fragments of light in the fog of history. They interweaved and stimulated each other, barely allowing him to see the fuzzy area. The figure inside was obviously a woman.
Female.
A thought came to his mind as he realized that he had missed a direction when he analyzed the transmigrator. Transmigrators had an objective mindset. They could completely control themselves and not leave any traces that exceeded the times. But there was one thing that couldn't be avoided. It was very obvious that Sephira Castle was related to the three pathways related to the seer, apprentice, and marauder. After the birth of a transmigrator, they had to quickly make a connection with one of these three pathways. Not only was Klein involved in the case brought about by the Antigonus family's notebook, but he also quickly had the opportunity to choose the seer potion. In Intis, where Roselle was active, there was the secret order, and he got to know Zeratul early on. According to this logic, the ancient sun god with the marauder authority was indeed one of the reasonable suspects. Klein immediately conjured a pen and paper and began listing the corresponding names he knew at the moment. For example, 4 epoch people from the Antigonus, Zeratul, and Abraham family, or the kings of angels surrounding the ancient sun god. Before long, Klein's gaze stopped on a few names. The first person was none other than the ancient god Phlegrea, who clearly had the authority of seer. Behind him was his subsidiary god, the god of the dead, Salinger, and the goddess of misfortune, Amnesis. The latter was also known as the Evernight goddess. Chapter 1172, Unperturbed. Klein stared at the parchment in front of him for a long time without moving. After a while, he gently tapped the edge of the long modeled table, causing all the items that he conjured to disappear. He summoned his golden pocket watch and opened it to take a look. He sent a message to Little Sun informing him to prepare to participate in the tarot gathering. About 1,000 heartbeats later, dark red beams of light rose from the 2 sides of the long bronze table, condensing into different figures on different high-backed chairs. Without any gaps in time, all the members of the Tarot Club looked at the figure sitting at the very end, who was shrouded in gray fog. Seeing that Mr. Fool wasn't wearing a monocle, Leonard inwardly heaved a sigh of relief. Then he turned around and looked at the bottom of the long modeled table to confirm the situation of the world Klein Moretti. Similar to him, Catalea, Audrey, and Fours instinctively turned their attention to the world Gehrman Sparrow after seeing Mr. Fool. One of them knew that the world was in a dangerous situation and could only seek Mr. Fool's blessings. Another had failed to receive any feedback for 2 days, and she suspected that Gehrman Sparrow had really been embroiled in the matter regarding George III, with something definitely having happened during that time. The final one knew that George III's matter was extremely risky and was a little worried that Mr. World would suffer serious injuries. Seeing that the world Gehrman Sparrow was perfectly fine without any abnormalities, Audrey retracted her gaze, curtsied, and bowed towards the end of the long bronze table.
Good afternoon, Mr. Fool Tilde.
With the world situation becoming even more chaotic, she felt a little comforted by the fact that the Tarot Club could still maintain its original state. This significantly improved her mood. After the Tarot Club members bowed under Miss Justice's lead, the Fool Klein nodded slightly, indicating for everyone to sit down. Then he slowly surveyed the area and smiled.
It seems all of you were very concerned whether today's tarot gathering would proceed as usual.
Upon hearing this, Algiers' heartbeat sped up as he heard thumping sounds. Without a doubt, he believed that Mr. Fool was referring to him and was giving him a gentle punishment. In other words, he had given him a chance to repent. Alger lowered his head and said with a trembling voice,
"We weren't pious enough and thought too much."
Ugh. Why is Mr. Hanged Man apologizing on my behalf?
Fors, who had instructed Zio to ask Mr. Fool if the tarot gathering would proceed as scheduled, was stunned for a moment before she gave up on thinking. She then turned to the end of the long bronze table and lowered her head. She repeated,
We weren't pious enough and thought too much.
So I wasn't the only one who prayed to Mr. Fool over the past few days. Mr. Hanged Man claims to have overthought things because there was a possibility that the tarot gathering would be canceled, causing him to have some unnecessary speculations. But Fors shouldn't have thought of that.
Audrey looked across the table and then to her sides, feeling enlightened. The Fool nodded and looked around again.
Such concern is considered normal.
He laughed and sighed.
I've recently used the world's body to play a game with Amon in the Forsaken Land of the Gods. Thankfully, we didn't have to skip this tarot gathering.
Everything he said was the truth, but what the others would decipher from this information was definitely far from the actual situation. And this way, even if the news of the World Gehrman Sparrow being equal to the Fool was released, the members of the Tarot Club would only sneer in their hearts that Amon was trying his deceitful tricks again. To have a period of time that the world was equal to the Fool didn't necessarily mean that the world was always equal to the Fool. A portion of the truth was also a lie.
Played a game with Amon. Old man's guess was right. Mr. Fool was deliberately using Klein to bait blasphemer Amon. From the looks of it, he had obtained a rather satisfactory outcome, allowing Amon to suffer a terrible loss.
Leonard, who had long come up with speculations, felt that this was completely in line with his expectations and didn't doubt Mr. Fool's words at all.
Mr. Fool didn't reply for 15 minutes because he was in a critical moment battling Amon? He has already recovered to such a state?
Audrey was pleasantly surprised and shocked when she heard that. For some reason, she felt a strong sense of honor. Alger could also tell from Mr. Fool's words that he had taken another step towards his recovery. He was actually able to hold the upper hand against a king of angels. This made him even more frustrated at himself for having doubts and testing the Fool.
Mr. Fool had hinted in advance that the tarot gathering might be canceled because he had long predicted that there would be a conflict between him and Amon. In fact, it's even possible that he had taken the initiative to create this episode by setting up a trap for Amon.
Alger instantly made many connections and felt that there was no way he could hide his thoughts in front of such a high-level existence. He warned himself once again.
I can't do such things again.
So Mr. World didn't provide any feedback because his body was being used by Mr. Fool to resist Amon. That King of Angels, Amon, is truly powerful. Mr. Fool actually needed to personally take action.
Fors and Zio exchanged looks, not having any more doubts about their previous questions. Ketelea roughly understood the reason why the world had disappeared. She also guessed that the messenger who had the contractual ties with the world likely wasn't able to enter the Forsaken Land of the Gods. At the same time, she was surprised by the appearance of a king of angels appearing on stage in the present times. She felt that this was one of the signs of the apocalypse. Emlyn wasn't aware of what happened recently. He merely looked at everyone with a somewhat blank look. For some baffling reason, he felt that he had been locked behind Chanis Gate for far more than a week or two. Perhaps it had been a month or two, to the point that he felt like he no longer had a grasp over the current situation.
Mr. World has come to the Forsaken Land of the Gods. Did Mr. Fool use his body to engage in a battle with that terrifying Amon?
Derek was first alarmed before he felt a strong sense of joy. This meant that the City of Silver's next exploration would receive tremendous help. He immediately looked towards the end of the long bronze table, and he blurted out,
Honorable Mr. Fool, the chief wishes to receive your blessings for a ritual. Are you agreeable to such a request?
Having long learned of this from his prayers, Klein nodded slightly and said,
Sure.
After receiving his promise, Derek couldn't help but smile. For a moment, he didn't know how to express his gratitude. 2 seconds later, he lowered his head and said loudly,
My faith lies only with Mr. Fool.
The fool nodded and turned to look at Ma'am Hermit. He warmly said,
What questions do you have this time?
The Queen didn't say anything in her letter.
Catalia was taken aback as she decided to first ask something she wanted to know. After all, she could still ask several questions. She deliberated for 2 seconds before saying,
Honorable Mr. Fool, what's the truth behind George III's death?
The moment the hermit said that, Justice Audrey and company immediately focused their attention. This was exactly what they wanted to know. Amongst them, the Star Leonard had a certain level of understanding over the matter. He was more concerned about the deeper reason behind this incident. And among the members of the Tarot Club, the only one who was more confused about the situation was Emlyn. His mind was filled with thoughts like,
What happened?
He hadn't even read the newspapers recently, so he didn't know that King George III had been assassinated. As for the son, although he wasn't sure why George III died for no reason, he didn't care at all. The fool Klein smiled and said calmly,
George III wanted to become the Black Emperor, and for this reason he dug up the Tudor ruins, engaged in human trafficking, and created the Great Smog of Backland. He initiated a war, allowing the Fasak airships to bombard Backland. Unfortunately, he failed at the final ritual, and the secret mausoleum he needed for the ritual was destroyed.
He briefly described the entire incident in the calmest tone he could make, doing so without mentioning what he had done. It would be beneath Mr. Fool to explain the situation on his own accord.
The Great Smog of Backland. The airship raid. This was all done by George III to become a god?
Audrey's eyes widened as she instantly recalled the 2 things she had experienced before. Suddenly, she understood why the world Gehrman Sparrow wanted to stop George III from becoming a god. She knew that he was a gentle and kind gentleman, and he would definitely not allow the culprit behind these 2 tragic cases to go scot-free.
If it were me, I would also have thought of doing so, but I would hesitate and be stopped by the possibility of ill developments. As for Mr. World, he is firm and decisive. This is a matter that involves the deities. Yes, there should also be the will of Mr. Fool in this matter.
Audrey glanced at the world Gehrman Sparrow, who was sitting silently at the other end of the long, mottled table. She nodded slightly to express her agreement.
Black Emperor. George III wished to become a god? Yes, Mr. Fool has the Black Emperor card of blasphemy. Gehrman Sparrow was previously investigating the matter of the Great Smog and human trafficking. Indeed, all of these are connected together. There was actually such a secret hidden behind it. From the looks of it, Mr. Fool's goal has been achieved. His plan has succeeded. Therefore, he has taken one more step towards his recovery. He can now face off with a king of angels head-on.
The more Alger thought about it, the more fearful and spirited he became. He felt that, despite knowing of some clues ahead of time, he was completely unaware of Mr. Fool's setup. Amidst the shock experienced by Leonard, Fors, and the other members of the Tarot Club, Catalia, who already had a premonition, suppressed her emotions and decided to ask another question.
Honorable Mr. Fool, what's the attitude of the 7 deities regarding this matter?
Chapter 1173, Advice.
Good question.
The fool Klein inwardly praised her, and he explained by using the Red Angel Evil Spirits explanation in his own words.
The 7 deities wish to have a Black Emperor, but they are not unanimous in their candidate for the Black Emperor. When George III successfully obtained the ticket to becoming one through secret preparations, the 7 deities had no choice but to accept it, regardless of whether they approved of him or not.
So that's the situation. Apart from the Moon Emlyn and the Sun Derek, the other members of the Tarot Club were enlightened. They roughly understood why the churches acted in a rather contradictory manner when faced with the tragedies of the Great Smog of Backland, the deaths caused by the Fasacian air raid, and George III's assassination. Following that, they suddenly had a question. Since George III had already made preparations and had reached the final step of carrying out the ritual while obtaining the tacit approval of the 7 deities, why would he fail? They immediately thought of an answer, because Mr. Fool didn't agree to it.
In the destruction of George III's Black Emperor ritual, the churches probably didn't do anything to stop it. Perhaps they even provided some help to Mr. Fool's subordinates. Did the Church of the Lord of Storms make use of this chaos to secretly do something? No, they likely wouldn't conceal it too much.
Leonard recalled all the details he had previously discovered, and he was confident of his grasp over the overall situation.
The 7 deities, tacit approval. Mr. Fool vetoed it and sent the world and other blessed to secretly destroy George III's apotheosis ritual. But what has this got to do with the Queen? Why did she discover that Gehrman Sparrow has gone missing? Black Emperor. The Queen might have participated in the operation, led by Mr. Fool, and later discovered that a participant had gone missing.
Catalea made a guess at the truth through her rich knowledge and insight. And at this moment, Emlyn had just managed to make heads and tails of the discussions that had just been discussed, and he managed to understand the developments outside during his time in protective custody. George III had secretly plotted to become a god and received the 7 deities, tacit approval. In the end, Mr. Fool's Blessed destroyed his ritual, causing him to die on the spot. Seeing that everyone was silent, the fool Klein looked at the hermit Catalea and said,
Any other questions?
There's nothing else this time.
Catalea bowed her head even lower. She was more respectful than before towards the mighty figure at the end of the long bronze table. Although she had long known that Mr. Fool had the Snake of Fate, Death Console, and Ancient Bane under him, and was in secret control of the life school of thought, she still never expected that the powers Mr. Fool could mobilize in the real world were able to destroy a king's apotheosis ritual. Furthermore, he had foiled a plot of a king of angels, the son of the Creator.
Mr. Fool's hidden forces are more exaggerated than I imagined. What effect do the members of the Tarot Club exert on him? A backing faction? Individual growth? Or is it just a backup plan?
Catalea instantly thought of many things and momentarily forgot that she was already a Sequence 4 demigod. No matter which organization she was in, she was considered a member of the upper echelons.
Just the feats displayed by Mr. Fool is enough to make a saint lack confidence.
Justice Audrey only took a glance at Ma'am Hermit before she interpreted her mental state. At this moment, the fool Klein nodded.
You may begin.
Upon hearing this, Leonard immediately turned to the other end of the long, mottled table and said to the world,
How's your situation now?
Fors, Shio, Audrey, and the other members of the Tarot Club also cast their gazes over, expressing their concern for the world Gehrman Sparrow's situation. From their point of view, Mr. World, who was stuck between Mr. Fool and Angel of Time Amon as a combat tool, was probably in a bad situation. His survival meant that he was already considered lucky enough. Feeling the varied concern, Klein controlled the world and chuckled hoarsely.
Not too bad, but not too good either. It's all thanks to Mr. Fool's grace that I finally obtained a secret from Amon, but I haven't completely escaped from his grasp.
Without waiting for everyone to respond, he continued,
I'm currently in a rather sticky situation. I relied on Mr. Fool's powers to enter a certain concealed state and temporarily extricate myself from Amon's grasp. However, if I were to dispel this state and return to the real world, I'll only find myself back where my body is, and it's very likely that Amon is still loitering nearby. I would like to make an attempt at finding a solution. I wonder what your opinions are regarding this matter.
The meaning behind the world Gehrman Sparrow's words was very clear. He wanted to rely on himself first, leaving Mr. Fool's help as a last resort. And his actual meaning was essentially the same. Find a way to bypass the restrictions first. And in the case that his solution didn't really work, then he would consider living in the state of being undead. Solution? Alger and company were suddenly a little excited because the suggestions they provided would be used to fight against the King of Angels. If they were employed and were of use, then this would be a proud moment in their life, one that would remain for the rest of their lives. Audrey was just about to speak in excitement when she retracted her words. This was because she knew that she couldn't give random suggestions. Otherwise, it could lead to Mr. World getting caught by Eamon. So thought about it seriously and realized that she couldn't come up with any useful suggestions. She could only choose to observe and learn. Eldra thought for a moment and gave a suggestion using a question.
Must it be where your body originally was? Do you have any blood or hair that was kept elsewhere?
The fool Klein thought for a moment and made the world shake his head.
No.
Compared to his original body, a single tube of blood was too little. Thinking of this, Klein suddenly had an idea. Perhaps he could use those 2 tubes of blood as ingredients, combining them with other methods, using alchemical life to create a new body.
There are 2 problems. Firstly, alchemical life requires the spirit body's involvement. Otherwise, the final product might not be considered my body. Secondly, I don't know any demigods who can complete alchemical life. The only one barely related to them is Frank Lee. Will I end up becoming a mushroom man? Then, I'd be better off as an undead.
As Klein thought about it, he nearly shivered. After the hanged man's suggestion was rejected, the hermit Catalea set off from her knowledge of mysticism. She deliberated and asked,
Do you have a Sequence 3 sealed artifact?
Why do you ask?
The world asked.
A Sequence 3 sealed artifact can respond to prayers within a certain range. You can make use of that.
Catalea explained simply. Klein roughly understood what Ma'am Hermit was thinking.
You're talking about descent.
That's right. Get someone to set up a descent ritual at the periphery, and you should be able to respond to it in your own concealed state.
Catalea first glanced at the sun and described the specific plan. Then, she realized something as she asked,
Do you really have a Sequence 3 sealed artifact?
She originally wanted the world to seek Mr. Fool's bestowment.
I'm already a Sequence 3 Beyonder.
Klein replied simply as he controlled the world.
The Queen once said that using the blood of the Snake of Fate to advance would make it easier for me to become a Sequence 3 clairvoyant than others. Besides, the Tarot Club has given me plenty of precious mysticism knowledge. It has greatly helped me digest the potion, but even so, I still need another half a year before I have a chance of attempting to reach Sequence 3.
The hermit Catalea subconsciously looked around and discovered that the other members wore stupefied and envious looks. She sighed silently and said,
Is my suggestion useful, Mr. World?
The World Gehrman Sparrow shook his head.
There is a huge restriction when responding in that state.
Once he chose to descend, it would mean that he would begin the rest of his life, no, afterlife, as an undead.
Perhaps I can combine the 2 methods. Yes, I can use the method of praying to the Fool, Sea God, or Protector of Magic and Drama Performers to leave the forsaken land of the gods. But that's not urgent. It's too easy to reveal the truth.
The fool Klein made the world look at the star Leonard while in thought. Leonard instantly understood what he meant. He tersely acknowledged,
I'll go back and do some research to see if there are any other ideas.
Clearly, his true intention was to ask Old Man when he was back. He was an angel who knew Eamon rather well. Perhaps he could come up with suggestions that no one else could think of. This was the answer that Klein wanted. He immediately made the world say,
Okay.
After the discussion of how to escape his predicament came to an end, the World Gehrman Sparrow looked at Fours.
Help me ask the Abraham family if they still have any worms of cosmos that have yet to lose their spirituality. If there are, what will be the price for the exchange?
A worm of star was a high-level spiritual material. Most of the time, it didn't contain any Beyonder characteristics. Therefore, their spirituality would suffer an irreversible loss. Without any special methods, it would be difficult to preserve it for too long.
Worms of cosmos.
Force was taken aback before she nodded.
All right.
After receiving an answer, Klein made the world cast his gaze at the hermit Catalea.
If Miss Magician isn't able to exchange for a worm of star from the Abraham family, I would like to entrust you with a mission.
What mission?
Cattleya asked with interest. The world said with a smile.
Hunt the Aurora Order's Saint of Secrets, Bodis.
Chapter 1174, Joint Operation. The Aurora Order Saint of Secrets, Bodis. Mr. World wants to hunt him? For's first reaction was that she had heard wrongly. After all, Gehrman Sparrow had no connection to the Saint of Secrets. However, she quickly had a rough idea from the Worm of Star that had just been mentioned. This made her suddenly excited and thrilled. This was because she also wanted to hunt the Saint of Secrets, Bodis, to avenge her teacher's family. However, due to her lacking strength and the inability to pay for it, she had kept this thought to herself.
Although it sounds like Mr. World doesn't plan on personally taking action, Ma'am Hermit is also a sequence 4 demigod, and she has the support of that Queen Mystic behind her. I can provide the utmost support within my abilities.
As her thoughts raced, Force cast her gaze at the hermit beside her, waiting for her reply, Isas Tai. After some thought, Cattleya said,
Bodis is very likely a saint of the apprentice pathway. It's very difficult to hunt him. Besides, he has the Rose Redemption backing him and the True Creator's protection. With my current level, it's almost impossible for me to complete this mission solely on my own.
Klein made the World Gehrman Sparrow reply in a low and hoarse voice.
You can seek the help of Queen Mystic. I will also arrange for other partners for you. The reward is the right to choose the spoils of war first, and mysticism knowledge that will allow you to digest the potion within this year.
It's December.
Cattleya's heart palpitated when she heard that. She deliberated and said,
When the time comes, I will try, but I cannot guarantee success. No matter how difficult the mission of hunting the Saint of Secrets was, it couldn't be as dangerous as accepting the knowledge injection process from the hidden sage. And as for the mysticism knowledge provided by the latter, they didn't necessarily aid in digestion. There was a high probability that it included mathematics, machinery, and literature.
No problem. As long as you do it seriously, I'll still compensate you with the mysticism knowledge, even if you fail in the end.
The world nodded and confirmed the deal. At this moment, Force finally couldn't help but speak out.
Mr. World, Ma'am Hermit, can I join this mission? I might be able to provide some help.
Even if you didn't, I would have gotten you to.
The fool Klein secretly laughed and made the world nod gently.
There's a spot reserved for you in this mission.
Force wasn't surprised at all. She asked curiously,
What can I do? What do you need me to do?
Gehrman Sparrow replied in an extremely calm tone,
Bait.
Force opened her mouth, momentarily at a loss for words. She had a feeling that she knew that this would happen. Roch? The World Gehrman Sparrow continued.
Similarly, you also have the right to choose the spoils of war. You'll be just after Ma'am Hermit. Also, during this period of time, I can help you record beyond your powers, like traveling.
Force had never expected a reward, as it was her greatest reward to be able to exact revenge successfully. In the future, she might even receive additional rewards from her teacher. Without any hesitation, she nodded and said,
Okay.
The world immediately cast his gaze towards Miss Justice.
How's the digestion of your Dreamwalker potion?
Thanks to the expedition into Grozel's travels and the persistence she had put into her acting, the speed at which she digested the potion was very fast. Her eyes darted around as she thought for a moment.
I've already concluded the acting principles. In another 2 to 3 months, I should be able to completely digest it.
It's a little slow.
Klein mumbled inwardly as he made the world say,
Create more opportunities to act. If you can digest the potion before Ma'am Hermit attacks the Saint of Secrets, I can give you Form Rambus's Beyonder characteristic ahead of time, as payment so that you can join in on the operation.
Klein believed that he would have to stay in the Forsaken Land of the Gods for a very long time. Most of the matters in the outside world could only be interfered with through the members of the Tarot Club. It was also beneficial for him to increase their strength as soon as possible. Furthermore, he wasn't directly giving it to her. The difficulty of hunting the Saint of Secrets Bodis was just as Catalea had said. It was rather difficult.
All right.
Audrey was just fretting over how she could accumulate more credit with Mr. World. Therefore, she naturally agreed without any hesitation when she heard his offer.
In her heart, the members of the Aurora Order were lunatics and destructive maniacs. There was no need to find a reason to deal with them.
In addition, Audrey had previously been troubled by her lack of experience as a Beyonder. This gave her a chance. Although it was rather dangerous, it was still an opportunity.
Gehrman Sparrow sure is generous. To provide the knowledge that can help a mysticologist digest the potion and a sequence 4 demigod characteristic. This shouldn't only be for the Worm of Star. It sounds like a supplementary material. He's helping the members of the Tarot Club improve as quickly as possible according to Mr. Fool's will so as to be effective in the future?
Alger listened to the world's conversation with the other members and vaguely grasped a certain truth. This made him rather vexed. He suspected that if he hadn't lacked faith and had other thoughts, to the point of foolishly testing Mr. Fool, he might have already been assigned a mission that could aid him in pushing open the door of godhood. At that moment, Justice, who had agreed to the request, glanced at the magician and said with a faint smile,
I'm looking forward to the Abraham family not having any Worm of Star.
Me too.
Fours nodded seriously, indicating that she had the same thoughts. Seeing that the world was done speaking, Catalea thought for a moment and said to Judgment,
Do you want to join this mission? Do some intelligence gathering on the periphery. Your ability in this area left a deep impression on me.
Even without Ma'am Hermit's invitation, Shio wouldn't refuse in helping her friend. She nodded gently and said,
I don't have a problem if the operation is in Backland. If it's somewhere else, my role would be greatly discounted.
A sheriff and their own area of jurisdiction were always connected. The more familiar they were with the place, the better they could showcase their abilities. Once they exceeded that range, they could only rely on their Beyonder powers.
Your reward is being third to choose the spoils of war.
Catalea looked at the star once again.
If there's a need, I hope you can allow the official factions to appear at the right moment.
Leonard chuckled.
I hope you don't have to go that far. My reward shall also be a spoil of war.
If my dear poet friend here wasn't invited in the end, then the mission of hunting the Saint of Secrets would have nearly become a sorority for the female members of the Tarot Club.
The fool Klein muttered inwardly as he made the World Gehrman Sparrow finalize the matter. All that was left was to wait for the Abraham family's feedback. Following that, Alger and Derek reached a rental arrangement for the unshadowed crucifix. Just as they entered the free exchange segment, Emlyn couldn't help but look towards the end of the long bronze table.
Honorable Mr. Fool, can you give me a hint? How should I escape protective custody?
The fool, who was shrouded in the gray fog, nodded slightly and said simply,
This week.
His answer was said with great confidence, but it wasn't a prophecy, but a judgment of the situation.
The current situation had Fasak and Intis attacking Loen, while Fainapotter was attacking Loen's allies, Lenberg, Mason, etc. The three churches definitely didn't wish to suffer any damage the Sanguine could bring, while already having existing enemies. Therefore, Emlyn would be released very soon, but it was hard to say for Father Yutravsky. Similarly, the Sanguine's focus would definitely be shifted to the global situation. It was unlikely for them to have the motivation to continue probing Emlyn and his other partners.
In addition, in the past 2 days, the one whose reason for praying was the most forced, apart from Zio, was Emlyn White. Klein suspected that he had been locked in the basement of St. Samuel Cathedral all this time because it was convenient for the goddess to exert her influence on him. Now that the matter had ended, he was no longer of any use. Combined with the three factors, it wasn't difficult to conclude that Emlyn would be free in no time.
The only exception was that if this fellow had really been forgotten, be it the Church of Evernight or the Sanguine, they had forgotten that there was such a fellow locked behind Chanis Gate. If that was the case, I would get the Star Leonard to provide him with some assistance.
Emlyn heaved a sigh of relief and sincerely thanked Mr. Fool. At the end of the free exchange, the world Gehrman Sparrow suddenly looked at the hanged man.
You said that you've already arrived on Sonia Island and are inside the primitive forest?
Yes.
Alger replied in puzzlement. Gehrman Sparrow pondered for a moment.
You can try to seek out an elven ruin. Perhaps you might chance upon some sort of opportunity.
Alger suddenly thought of the Book of Calamity and the scenes he had seen in his dream. He nodded thoughtfully and said,
All right.
After another round of exchanges, the tarot gathering came to an end. Audrey and company stood up and bowed before leaving the world above the gray fog. After returning to his body, Leonard immediately lowered his voice and described Klein's predicament. Finally, he said,
Old man, do you have any good suggestions?
My suggestion? I think it's better to ask the fool for help.
Pelez Zoroast replied without any hesitation. Leonard coughed lightly and said,
Aren't you going to use this opportunity to make things difficult for Aemon?
Chapter 1175. Ideas are very important. Pelez Zoroast chuckled.
Making things difficult for Aemon. What benefits can there be? Otherwise, forget it.
Leonard was momentarily at a loss for words. After a few seconds, he said,
At least it can make you feel good.
Pelez chuckled.
I will feel better if you don't bring this topic up.
Without waiting for Leonard to respond, this Sequence 1 angel from the Marauder Pathway sighed with his slightly aged voice.
Doesn't your former colleague have a deceit charm? Perhaps he can use this to come up with a solution.
After getting rid of the Aemon avatars in Backland, Pelez had given the godhood symbols and magic labels needed to make 4 charms: deceit, parasite, deprivation, and aging to Leonard. Leonard had passed on this knowledge to Klein, and the latter had used the knowledge and the worms of time to create 1 deceit, parasite, and deprivation bullet each. Later on, he had used them to deal with Qonus Kilgore, but Leonard wasn't aware of this. Leonard whispered thoughtfully,
Old man, are you saying that by using the deceit charm you can mislead Aemon and cause him to misidentify the location, preventing him from influencing Klein's escape?
In his mind, Pelez Zoroast snapped back.
Do you think it's possible to use a deceit charm in front of a Marauder Pathway's King of Angels?
It's impossible.
Leonard laughed dryly and pressed in a thick-skinned manner.
What do you mean then?
Pelez Zoroast's voice suddenly sounded more spirited.
Deceive the rule that one can only return to where one's body is.
Leonard asked in shock.
Deceive the rule? That works too?
Pelez gave a self-deprecating laugh and sighed.
Compared to deceiving Aemon, deceiving a rule is much easier. After all, underneath this world is madness and chaos.
This sentence made Leonard speechless for a moment. On the one hand, he wasn't experienced enough. He didn't know that orders and laws could be deceived, and on the other hand, he never expected that, in Old Man's heart, Aemon was even more terrifying than the laws of nature and the order of the world. After nearly 10 seconds, he spoke again.
With this method, how high is the possibility of success?
It's very, very low.
Pelez said with a sneer.
However, the probability of deceiving the order of the world like this, with a deceit charm made from a worm of time from Amon's avatar, is very, very low. Therefore, my suggestion is still to get him to make a request to the fool for help. Don't waste any more time. When fighting Aemon, the longer the delay, the more dangerous it will be.
Leonard pondered for a moment before nodding in agreement.
I understand. I'll also advise him to do so.
Of course, he wouldn't forget mentioning the highly improbable method that Old Man had suggested.
It's good that you understand. Seriously, disturbing an old man's reading.
As Pelez mumbled, his voice gradually lowered and disappeared from Leonard's mind. In 7 Pinster Street, the newspaper that was placed on the coffee table suddenly flew up and automatically spread open over the sofa.
Using a deceit charm to deceive the requirement that I can only resurrect where my original body is?
Above the gray fog, in the ancient palace, Klein reconstructed Pala Zoroast's suggestion in his own words. As soon as he finished speaking, he recalled the animal hide lantern that kept burning. Aemon had deceived the laws of nature, allowing the candle to remain in a magical state and continue burning for a week without needing any fuel. His eyes lit up as he whispered.
This line of thought is something only an angel from the Marauder pathway can think of immediately. It might not be impossible.
Like Pelez, he did feel that, compared to dealing with Aemon, it was much easier to deal with the laws of nature. After seeing Hope, he immediately analyzed the possible outcome.
Although I've already used the deceit bullet, I can summon it from the historical void. After all, before the effects end, I'll definitely reform my body and successfully resurrect. The laws of nature are truly pitiful. Not only will they be deceived, even the item used to deceive it is fake. The only problem is that the bullet might not be able to deceive the mysticism law. It was already a little difficult to deal with Kunis Kilgore back then.
Amidst his thoughts, he slowly surveyed the area and gradually gained inspiration. That was to use Sapphira Castle. After gaining initial control of Sapphira Castle, he could already mobilize the power of a Sequence 2 angel here. And many of the things he had come into contact with previously had explained that the authority of Sapphira Castle had a high probability of spanning over the three pathways of Seer, Apprentice, and Marauder. It could generate a convergence effect on the corresponding Beyonders, and it had clearly attracted the attention of Aemon. That was to say, Klein suspected that Sapphira Castle had the power of these three pathways at the same time. However, as a seer, most of the power he could stir was concentrated in this domain.
With the help of the medium known as the deceit bullet, I might be able to stir the other powers of Sapphira Castle. Since I'm already capable of using some miracles in the seer domain, having power from the Marauder pathway at the angel level is a highly reasonable deduction. The only problem is that there must be a medium of a sufficient level. This way, I don't have to worry about not being able to deceive that rule.
As his thoughts brightened up, he seriously began to formulate a plan. He used the mysticism laws as his target and attempted to formulate a scam.
In order to reduce the difficulty, it's best to have additional preparations. I can't deceive something out of nothing, at least unless I'm Amon's true body, yes. I'll bestow a tube of my blood to Little Sun. I'll create a fake respawn point that exceeds the range. And then, using the deceit bullet as a trigger, stir the corresponding angel-level powers contained within Sapphira Castle, misdirecting that rule, and making it view the fake respawn point as the real one, while the real one becomes the fake one.
He outlined the details bit by bit, and when his thoughts finally took form, Klein immediately used the mysticism connection between himself and the spot he died to observe the actual situation with his true vision. He saw that the grayish-yellow fog had thinned a lot, and the deep ravine that hid Chernobyl was no different from before. It was unknown where Aemon, who was wearing a pointed hat and a monocle, had stolen a rock from and had placed it on the spot where Klein had passed away. He sat on it and patiently played with a human-skinned glove. He occasionally bent the human-skinned glove's finger and stretched it at other times, as if he could pass 100 years doing that. About a kilometer away, in a certain spot in the grayish-yellow fog, 3 Ammons in black classical mage robes crouched around a rock as they seriously played poker cards that they had stolen from somewhere. From time to time, they would nudge their monocle. Elsewhere in this extensive moor, Aemon would be either alone or in groups, strolling leisurely, writing in thought, or discussing all sorts of questions with one another. In the dark and dangerous forsaken land of the gods, it was such a harmonious scene. It would have been better if the young men weren't all the same, wearing classic black robes, pointed hats and monocles, with similar black hair, black eyes, broad foreheads, and thin faces. Just as Klein was about to make a further observation, the Aemon, sitting on the rock, suddenly raised his head. He nudged his crystal-carved monocle and looked at him. Across the moor, all of the Aemons looked up at the highest point of the fog of history. Klein immediately retracted his gaze and cut off the connection. In the City of Silver, Derek Berg arrived at the top of the spire and met Chief Colin Iliad.
Your Excellency, I've already received the promise of blessings.
Derek said frankly and directly. With white hair and an old scar on his face, Colin Iliad was visibly relieved. He slowly nodded and said,
That's good. That's good.
He had repeated the sentence in a rare instance. As an excellent demon hunter and the City of Silver's chief, he had always been patient, never taking unnecessary risks. Therefore, with the sudden lack of a response from the fool, he didn't immediately turn to the true creator, and he decided to wait patiently for another month. For the City of Silver, which had been waiting in the Dark Ages for more than 2,000 years, a month was something that could be accepted. Without waiting for Derek to reply, Demon Hunter Colin left the window and calmly said,
Head back first. I'm going to start preparing for the advancement ritual.
Derek glanced at the chief and said sincerely,
You'll definitely succeed.
He didn't stay any longer. He immediately left the spire and returned home. After setting up the ritual again and placing the 6 powerful corpses that he had hunted to the correct position, Colin Iliad began to concoct the potion. After all of this was done, the City of Silver chief closed his eyes and lowered his head, chanting in Jotun,
The fool that doesn't belong to this era, the mysterious ruler above the gray fog, the king of yellow and black who wields good luck.
Above the gray fog, Klein saw ripples of light emanate as he heard a slightly illusory prayer. He immediately summoned a paper figurine and combined the power of Saphira Castle with it. He threw it into the prayer circle and conveniently marked the City of Silver's chief. At the same time, with the help of this prayer circle, he observed the situation of the entire spire and the City of Silver. He confirmed that there was no sign of Aemon's parasitic existence near the chief or little son.
I have to seize this opportunity.
Klein immediately conjured the World Gehrman Sparrow and made him pose as he prayed. At this moment, Colin Iliad saw the light. In the holy light, a holy angel with 12 pairs of illusory wings suddenly descended. As clean white feathers fluttered down, the demon hunter was embraced by these wings of light. This was a blessing from Mr. Fool.